everyone, I'm Allie with Potomac Beads. Join me for this Better Beader episode as I show you how to use multi-strand clasps versus single-strand clasps. Sometimes you might have a pattern that's calling for a 2-strand clasp or a 3-strand clasp, and you only have a 1-strand on hand, or vice versa. You may be looking at a pattern that calls for a single, but you only have a 2-loop, or that's all that's in stock. I thought what we could do for this Better Beader episode is address some of those issues and how you can change up from one clasp style to another. So I have here 2 different projects sitting with really great clasps, whether or not it's a single strand or like the Wimbledon bracelet, or a multi-strand 3-strand like this Rick Rack. They have beautiful clasp guarding clasps on them. You may have some bracelets that have the tube clasps or have just simple toggles, lobsters, that sort of thing. What happens if the pattern calls for a single strand clasp and you only have a double, or it calls for a double and you only have a single? What you want to do is look at your project and establish where you can add 2 loops instead of the 1 loop. So if I'm looking here at the Wimbledon bracelet and I'm turning it over toward the back, and maybe I have this Elegant Elements clasp guarding clasp with 2 loops. So easy to use the 2 loops. Instead of coming out in the middle of the project, you're going to come out on the edges or the sides of the right angle weave. Likewise, I have sitting here to show as an example the Pandora's box bracelet. I have just a little sample, and I have 3 seed beads on that little sample thread going through my last tublet. I'm simply going to add my clasp, so back down through one of my 11-0 seed beads here, and then add 2 more 11-0s, and sew back in through the tublet. This is most likely the way that you're going to do this if you have that single strand clasp. When you pull tight, then it's going to go right up toward the project and kind of get that V shape in it. What happens though if you want to use a multi-strand clasp and the project is just calling for a single strand? You can easily think about putting on a button. Most of the time, adding a clasp is very, very similar to adding a button. How would you go about and line it up? Take your project or your piece and look at the 2-strand clasp that you have on hand, or the multi-strand clasp, and lay it against the piece and see where the loops line up. Almost every single project, if you would like to switch out from a single strand to a multi-strand clasp, it can easily be done. So if I want to go from a single strand clasp, like this lovely clasp guarding clasp, to a double strand clasp, I need to look and just make sure that the piece or the clasp is not too big for the design of the bracelet. In this bracelet here, for the Pandora's box, I would come out of the tublet, attach to one of the loops, and then the pattern changes slightly where I'll go back through that same tublet, out through the side, because I need to attach the 1 strand first, into the next loop, and then back through the tublet again. I'll reinforce this and reconnect and reestablish more thread going through that connection point. So simple. Same deal here for the Wimbledon. If I wanted to, I'd come out the corners of the piece, add my wire guard or my wire protector on each corner, and attach to a multi-strand clasp guarded or Elegant Elements clasp. Just like the 3-strand here of the Rick Rack bracelet, you can also switch from a multi-strand clasp into a single strand clasp. Coming out of each row here of my square stitch, I would just simply attach 1 and then the 2nd and the 3rd all to the same loop of 1 clasp. You want to keep in mind for a bracelet like this, there is a pattern that the beads go through, so you're going to look at the end, put that one coming out the clasp first, middle will go to the middle, end will go toward the end to be able to establish and maintain that braid. However, very, very simply, most bead weaving projects or sewing projects, you can look at different buttons or clasps or closures and increase really, really easily from 1 single strand to a double strand. You can also, if you want to and you have a really, really wide bracelet, look at offering and adding in 2 buttons like we do with the Rula herringbone or even the Super Duo herringbone knit. You can include 2 clasps and 2 buttons if you have something a little bit wider, having one next to the other. When you're converting from a single strand to a multi-strand, again, just look and see where the loops are on your clasp and how it's going to work to balance the piece to make sure to apply them instead of in the center equally on each side. When it comes to right angle weave, like the Wimbledon bracelet, it's super, super easy to change up from any style clasp from single strand to multi-strand, attaching onto the corners of any of your little right angle weave boxes there. In most of these projects too, I love using substantial clasps that make the project, that really become a significant design element when looking at it. So what I urge and suggest you to do is look through your stash and look at the different clasps and closures, maybe even the buttons that you have that you're looking at, expanding from 1 button to 2 buttons. Look at the design, look how it's going to stay balanced by adding maybe 1 versus 2 or even 3 loops onto the project. You can simply think about it in its most simple form, like sewing on a button. As always with these Better Beader episodes, they are designed to make you a better beader. We also really love when you as a community member post down below your suggestions, your questions, or your tricks to help make others better beaders as well. As always, if you haven't yet done so, please subscribe so you don't miss anything from us here at PotomacBeads. Remember, we love to have you post your examples and your designs in our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. If you happen to need any supplies or want to check out some of the projects that we went over today, you can check us out at PotomacBeads.com as well as PotomacBeads.eu. We'll also put links below the video for easy access points to the projects that were discussed in this video. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully this episode helped make you a better beader and gain some more information about converting from a single strand to a multi-strand clasp.